The Earth was born of millions of years of fire and rain. The heaving crust of the Earth, the constant swirling of ocean and air combined to create the richest diversity of life in the known universe. The same powerful forces that created life are with us today, seemingly bent on destroying it. In the past 100 years, over 1 million people have been killed by volcanoes and earthquakes. Another million have perished in hurricanes, tropical cyclones, and tornadoes. The total damage is beyond calculation. Has Mother Nature gone haywire? Or are these terrible events simply part of our planet's eternal drama of creation? Can we learn to coexist? Or are we forever destined to be at the mercy of these powerful forces of nature?
Forces of Nature is narrated by Patrick Van Horn.
San Francisco in 1989 is a growing metropolis. Its monuments of stone and glass exude permanence. But this is a dangerous illusion. On October 17th, as its team plays in the World Series, the city suddenly and dramatically comes apart at the seams.
So, Oakland A's take. Tell you what, we're having an earthquake.
Video cameras citywide capture a singular moment of terror. It is the strongest earthquake to hit California since 1906. The quake itself is felt over 400,000 square miles, including Oregon and Nevada.
The paper said that the whole seismographic where the big one was a minute, but I would say it was closer to 5 because it shook a long time and it just kept coming and it kept coming and it kept coming again, and it was like riding a roller coaster. But then when I actually saw what had happened, I just, in my wildest imagination, had no comprehension that Mother Nature could be that destructive and just,
The images of devastation are broadcast all over the world. The massive destruction of buildings, the loss of some 60 lives, and the collapse of the very symbols of California, its freeways, overpasses, and bridges.
Earthquakes are particularly frightening to many people because we feel so out of control. We can't predict them. Why do people want them predicted in the first place? Well, that would give us more control over the situation. If we knew when it was coming, if we knew they happened in the early morning, if we could put some constraints on it, we would feel more in control.
In 1906, no one is aware of the seismic danger when San Francisco is suddenly shaken by the strongest quake in California's recorded history. The heart of the city lies in ruins. Raging fires follow. 28,000 buildings are destroyed, leaving 300,000 homeless and more than 1,000 dead.
The bigger the earthquake is, the longer it lasts. And the 1906 earthquake lasted almost 2 minutes. Most of the buildings came down. The fires got going and burnt many of the rest of them.
It has taken 60 years to create what, at the time, is the most important city west of the Rockies. It takes just 2 minutes to destroy it.
California is sitting on what's called a plate boundary. So we have these two very large sections of the Earth's crust that come together at the San Andreas Fault, and they are moving with respect to each other. The Pacific Ocean is moving towards the northwest. They move slowly. They move at about 1 3/4 inches per year. It's about the rate at which your fingernails grow. An earthquake happens when you have sudden slip across the surface of a fault. That releases energy. If you're slipping over a larger area, every point on that surface gives off energy. You have a larger area, you have a bigger earthquake.
The biggest quake ever recorded in North America strikes Alaska in 1964. Measuring 8.4 on the Richter scale, it shakes the ground for a seemingly interminable 4 minutes. Parts of downtown Anchorage drop some 20 feet. The city is completely devastated. Then an eerie phenomenon occurs. 120 miles away, all the water is mysteriously sucked from Valdez Harbor. A shipboard sailor records it on film. What he captures is the creation of a killer wave, a tsunami. The huge tremor sends a massive surge rippling south at 500 miles per hour. Only half a day later, it pounds the coast of Japan, some 4,000 miles away. As an island nation, Japan is a frequent victim to these killer waves. And it is no stranger to other seismic dangers. 10% of the world's earthquakes occur in Japan. One of the worst is in September 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake. 5 full minutes triggers massive firestorms. They rage for days. 2/3 of Tokyo and almost all of Yokohama are destroyed. And worse, a staggering 140,000 people die. Today, Japan has the world's most advanced earthquake preparedness program and strict building codes. But in December 1994, Japan is tested once again. An earthquake shakes the ground for 35 seconds. Buildings once thought to be quake-proof crumble to the ground. Early morning commuters are killed when expressways collapse. The ancient city of Kobe goes up in flames, along with Japan's illusions of preparedness.
I at least have the intellectual knowledge that I'm far more likely to be murdered in Los Angeles than I am to die in an earthquake. We kill 100 times as many people in drive-by shootings as we do in earthquakes. So I'm not really particularly afraid of dying because I know the risk is so low.
Los Angeles is a place where creating dreams is a major industry, a city of illusions. But reality strikes hard in the early morning hours of January 17th, 1994. It is the worst earthquake in the history of the city.
Hey, it could explode at any minute. Get out of the house. Go across the street.
Evacuate the area.
Only its timing, 2 hours before rush hour, spares Los Angeles a catastrophic death toll.
Hello, is anybody there?
Chuck,
Is he underneath us?
Yeah.
He's underneath right there. We can't get to it from this side. Okay, the whole thing just shifted down one. Right.
The whole city seems disoriented.
Hey, look up. I am going southbound, and there's traffic in the southbound lanes coming at me in the number 1 lane. I am southbound on the 5, and I'm in shock. There is traffic coming straight at me.
9 freeways collapse. The damage toll is between $15 and $30 billion, one of the most costly natural disasters in American history.
We didn't bother to try to get stuff out. We lost everything.
Our house shook, our bed collapsed, our dresser fell over onto us on the bed.
And everything started burning down. Everything is burned.
We have nothing that happens before an event, so we can't predict a particular event. We can only talk about the long term. We've seen small earthquakes in almost every state of the Union. We've seen damaging earthquakes in more than half of them. So even though California has them more often, many, many other states face a significant risk.
The Los Angeles quake reminds us that while we may someday learn to predict earthquakes, we will never prevent them. Most well-reinforced construction withstands the tremors. So we must continue striving to build a safer environment.
When we come back, some of the most devastating tornadoes of all time.
A brilliant day in America's heartland. This is the nation's breadbasket, and any sign of rain is a welcome sight. But these dark clouds harbor something far more ominous.
Some thunderstorms this afternoon and evening in the high-risk area are likely to produce very large hail and damaging winds.
This is no ordinary storm, but a powerful front capable of producing deadly cyclones of destruction. Forecasters at the National Weather Service are on the alert. This is tornado season. Their time on Earth is often less than 15 minutes, and their paths sometimes just hundreds of feet. But these twisters pack a lethal wallop.
Tornado on the ground on I-44. Cars split. We got numerous people injured. I-44, tornado on the ground.
Here it comes. It's coming at us. It's coming at us. No, the power lines are coming down. Watch out. They're hot. Don't step on them. They're hot. Come on. No. No, wait. Go.
Every tornado is a potential killer. Updrafts can suck up houses, cars, animals, and people, hurling them through the air for hundreds of yards.
Tree just blew over. We got a tree over. Just look at the top. Get away from the windows. Get away. Get away. Get away. Get away. Get away. Where's everybody? Where is everybody? Where is everybody? Are you guys okay? Whoa!
The winds from a tornado are the fastest on Earth, often exceeding 300 miles per hour, toppling buildings, filling the air with deadly flying debris.
Let's go, Craig. Let's go. Listen to the wind. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Storm chasers risk their lives to witness and document tornadoes' torturous paths.
Watch faster. Watch faster, Greg's catching us. You gotta go, buddy. Oh my God, there it is. Everything's blowing up. It's coming in the right. It's 2 blocks west of me. It's coming in. Oh, come on, get in the car. Daniel, get in the car. Oh, debris everywhere. Move.
The Plains outbreak, 1991. In just 2 days, 54 tornadoes rage across 5 Midwestern states. damage is staggering, over $250 million. The most violent of the twisters strikes McConnell Air Force Base in Kansas. It levels apartment buildings, homes, a school, and a hospital.
Sirens are going off for 15, 20 minutes, but I thought, no way would it hit this place.
Miraculously, there are no fatalities. Still, some 16 are injured.
It's like almost like a disaster movie scene that you see with the twisted cars and the houses that are blown apart, and amazing devastation in a short period of time. And this shows you how 30 minutes can make a tremendous difference in somebody's life.
Now the cyclone intensifies and heads for Andover, Kansas. A police officer warns residents of a mobile home park to evacuate.
Some of them were running to the shelter, some of them were running their cars, and there was one guy that was walking along with his dog.
Only minutes later, the tornado strikes. Hundreds of homes are obliterated. 15 people are killed.
You can't describe it.
How do you feel now?
I like to be alone for a few minutes. Got some thanking to do.
Tornadoes occur worldwide, but most are found in the Great Plains of America. Tornado Alley.
That is where the conditions that form these strong rotating thunderstorms occur most prevalently. On the east side of the Rocky Mountains is where we have a collision of very cold air coming down from Canada that strikes the very warm, moist air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and those kind of collisions are the perfect spawning grounds for these rotating thunderstorms.
These storms, called supercells, often bring showers of hail. Hailstones pelt the earth at speeds of 100 miles an hour, a deadly rain of icy shrapnel. Most hailstones are smaller than a quarter, but some are as large as baseballs. Hail is often accompanied by lightning. Each discharge is incredibly powerful, up to 30 million volts. It's the second leading cause of weather deaths. But the most destructive spawn of these supercells are tornadoes.
We have this scale that we call the F scale, which the F stands for Fujita, a renowned scientist from the University of Chicago. And F0 and 1 tornadoes are weak tornadoes. F5 are the strongest tornadoes, the ones that we think are on the order of 300 miles per hour.
In an F5 tornado, it just wipes the foundation clean of the house. You know, everything that's gone. There's, even scours pavement off of highways.
See it right there? Wow. Concrete has been scoured.
So you get caught in something like that, there's no hope for you then. Just to see them in motion, it's like seeing the sky animated. It just, things are moving so fast. And just seeing a tornado is, the ultimate goal of mine. And I've pursued it ever since.
Tornado is only about 100 yards away.
It is more than simply the thrill of the hunt that draws so many to follow tornadoes. There's also the excitement of discovery.
It was a very good phrase put forth by one of our renowned scientists in our field. And he said that the tornado is the last frontier in meteorology, and that's arguable. But what he went on to say is that it's the only easily identifiable phenomena whose internal structure and dynamics remain highly speculative.
If tornadoes remain essentially mysterious, they are also possessed of a terrible beauty. Still, in America's heartland, a darkening sky can fill the hardiest souls with petrifying fear.
We'll be right back with some of the most frightening hurricanes ever captured on film.
The sea is a powerful lure. But as new residents flock to the coast, many are blissfully unconcerned with the potential danger brewing thousands of miles away, a swirling tempest called a hurricane. Weather experts are especially vigilant from July to October, for they know that any storm off the coast of Africa can quickly grow into a monster. With violent winds, deadly surges, and torrential downpours, hurricanes have a long, violent history in America. 8 to 10 times a year, the U.S. is struck by hurricanes, and they can strike anywhere from the Gulf Coast to the Atlantic seaboard. Before satellite tracking, there was little warning of approaching storms. In 1900, a hurricane catches Galveston, Texas, unprepared, killing 6,000. To this day, the nation's most lethal natural disaster. By 1969, prediction has improved, but few heed the warnings as Camille, America's most violent storm, strikes the Gulf states. When powerful winds combine with extremely low pressure, they create a mountain of sea. It heads ashore as a massive wave known as storm surge. These surges account for over 90% of hurricane deaths. Storm surges from Camille leave 500 dead and cause $1 billion in damage. A hurricane begins as a small rainstorm, but soon, drawing energy from warm ocean waters and high-level winds, it is stirred into a fierce tropical cyclone. The Space Shuttle provides a breathtaking view of the scope of these massive cyclones. At the National Hurricane Center in Miami, computer models are used for predictions, but much is left to first-hand observation.
Well, during Hurricane Hugo, we saw that the steering currents were in a situation where it could approach Puerto Rico. So 5 of us got in a plane and waited for it there. It actually clipped the northeast tip of the island, so we got in the eye of the storm there.
As the eye of the storm passes, the winds intensify again. Jim Leonard retreats to his hotel. There, he hopes to film the more violent half of the hurricane.
And as it got stronger and stronger, debris was starting to be lifted off the parking lot, and it looked like it was going to get thrown back toward us. So we decided at that point to start going down the stairway. As we're going down the stairwell, the rain is being driven into the walls, through the stairs, coming down the stairway, and the wind you see here squealing. At this point, it's probably in excess of 150 miles an hour.
And water is getting into the wiring of the building, and it's causing the lights to flicker on and off like that. It was a real adrenaline rush during that time. We were seeing the ultimate hurricane at that point.
This Force 4 hurricane pounds Puerto Rico, crippling the island's electric power and water supply systems. Before Hugo is done with the Caribbean, at least 27 people are killed and upwards of 150,000 are left homeless. The island's resort economies are devastated. Then Hugo heads for the Carolinas. 500,000 people evacuate. It sends massive storm surges into the coastline. By the time the storm spins itself out, it leaves 21 dead in the U.S. and causes $18 billion in damage. Three years later, the eastern seaboard braces itself for yet another killer storm. Its name is Andrew, and it's taken dead aim on South Florida. As the storm approaches, Florida undertakes the largest evacuation in American history, more than 1 million people. But how far can they flee from what appears to be a growing catastrophe?
One important thing with hurricanes is when they're coming in as an intensifying storm, you're going to get much higher wind gusts than you will with a storm that's coming in leveled off or weakening. Where Hurricane Andrew came in and was rapidly intensifying at the time it made landfall, and also, which was even more strange, it was still intensifying after it got within 10 miles inland. And so the wind gusts in Hurricane Andrew, I think, were higher, much more destructive.
Just off Miami, Andrew's winds are blowing at 140 miles an hour. Then, in the dark early hours of August 24th, 1992, Hurricane Andrew bursts through the windows and doors of South Florida. It hits hard, of all places, the National Hurricane Center in Miami. There, it breaks the wind gauge at 164 miles per hour. It tears apart Miami's infrastructure, houses and buildings, bridges, water towers, and power lines. The city is plunged into a terrifying darkness. The morning hours reveal the power of this raging tempest, and it has spared little or nothing in its path. 15,000 boats, 100,000 buildings, and a zone of devastation the size of 12 Manhattan islands. With $30 billion in damage, Andrew is the most devastating weather disaster ever to hit the United States. But soon, the rebuilding begins. Even the forces of nature can't keep us from the lure of the coastline and the beauty of the sea. From seething cauldrons deep within the earth, molten rock emerges. Then, like an incandescent tide, it sears its way across the landscape or explodes in fountains of red-hot lava. Volcanoes are among the most dramatic spectacles on Earth and the most deadly. Throughout history, they have buried whole cities, killed hundreds of thousands of people, and darkened the skies with lethal gases. Yet, for all their terrible power, volcanoes are among nature's mightiest builders, creators of mountains, plains, and islands. Among them, the Hawaiian Islands. This tropical paradise was born of violent volcanic eruptions from the ocean floor. Scientists from all over the world and photographers like John Kierkegaard descend on Kilauea, which has been erupting continually since 1983. These lava samples provide insight into the inner workings of the Earth.
The trick is to leave it in long enough to get a nice glob of lava, but not so long that the cable becomes stuck to the channel wall.
To the ancient Hawaiians, Kilauea is home to Pele, a fire goddess. The Hawaiians have also named the two main types of lava. Pahoehoe forms smooth rivers of stone. When cooled, they're used as foot trails in the park. But A'a is sharp and crusty, and the cry a person makes when stepping on it. The new flows from Kilauea have buried more than 35 square miles, roughly the size of Manhattan. They continue scorching their way through the surrounding woodlands, oblivious to real estate values. The park's visitor center, host to some 2 million tourists a year, is also threatened by these rivers of fire. Firefighters hose down the leading edge with cooling water, hoping to solidify the lava and stop the flow. After a full day's dousing, the tactic appears to work. The molten river has been stopped. But Pele, the fire goddess, refuses to concede defeat. The following day, the deadly flow resumes again, and this time, it is relentless. Now the molten lava is at the very doorstep of the visitor center. The fire crews pour on thousands of gallons of water. It's a futile effort. The lava flows continue on, obliterating the town of Kalapana.
Lava has covered nearly everything out to the edge of Kaimu Bay, in places to a depth exceeding 20 feet. Kalapana is gone, and now so too is Kaimu Bay, and with it the black sand beach and all those tall coconut trees.
As the river of lava flows into the sea, it cools and solidifies, eventually turning a bay into a beach. The Earth continues to create even as it destroys. Most people assume that lava is the most dangerous discharge from volcanoes, but historically there are far more deadly ejecta. Mount Vesuvius, 79 AD, a deadly torrent of hot mud, ash, and lethal gas blankets the Roman city of Pompeii. At least 2,000 are buried alive. Mount Pele in Martinique, 1902. A volcanic eruption sends a glowing cloud in a noiseless rush towards the port city of Saint-Pierre. "30,000 are killed in minutes. There is no lava, just a boiling black cloud of superheated gas and ash. It's called pyroclastic flow. In Saint-Pierre, only 2 people survive. "78 years later, in March 1980, tremors shake Mount St. Helens in Washington state. Steam and ash begin venting from the crest of the mountain. Scientists from the U.S. Geological Survey quickly set up observation posts. Then on May 18th, an explosion erupts with the power of 500 atomic bombs, blowing away the face of the mountain. A second eruption sends a cloud of ash and gas 12 miles into the air and a lethal pyroclastic flow rushing down the mountain.
This location we're standing on right now was covered by 200-foot high fir trees, complete virgin forest. And all of the areas surrounding us and in the background were also covered with virgin forest. This forest was totally destroyed, and as you can see, trees were either broken off right at the ground, leaving these stumps with a shredded end facing away from the volcano. The trunks were carried, in some cases, actually miles away by this blast, which consisted of dense rock material, hot gases, and ash, traveling at several hundred miles per hour.
The heat from the blast melts snow and ice, sending floodwaters down on the valley communities. Volcanic mud and water are a potent mixture, swift-moving rivers of concrete, plowing everything in their path. 2 scientists die. One of them is found buried alive. The Pacific Ocean is literally surrounded by a volcanic ring of fire. In the Philippines, a dragon awakes from a 600-year slumber, the most powerful volcanic eruption in the 20th century. Base, the Philippines, 1991. With some 15,000 military personnel, this is a crucial link in America's defense of the Pacific. But in June, low rumblings portend a critical threat just 10 miles away. U.S. geologists are brought in to assess the situation. The tremors come from Mount Pinatubo, a volcano that has been dormant for 600 years. They determine Pinatubo is ready to erupt. Even more ominous, its deadly flow would follow the path of its previous eruption, directly to where Clark Air Force Base now stands.
Everybody wants to know, well, do we evacuate now? People don't want probabilities. They want black and white. Yes, no, it's going to erupt, it's not. It's going to be big, it's not. We should move, we shouldn't.
The longer a volcano lies dormant, the more violent the eruption. Pinatubo has had 6 long centuries to intensify. Still, the geologists feel they can give General Studer at least 6 hours warning. And so the base commander will wait and see.
So it's not as critical. Right. The batteries be.
Yeah, that was part of the plan.
But to Filipino authorities, the risk is already too great for the civilian population. There are some 80,000 people in the area. And so it begins, the largest peacetime evacuation in Philippine history. Meanwhile, the American geologists issue a grim warning. Seismic activity now warrants the highest alert level, 4.
And I said, you know, Dave, I think maybe we're witnessing the precursor to a historic eruption. And he says, don't talk like that. I don't want to hear that.
General Studer issues the order. Clark Air Force Base will be evacuated, but some 1,500 personnel will stay behind to prevent looting. American and Filipino scientists also remain to monitor the volcano's increasingly dangerous rumblings.
Currently about 65, and we just watched it go boom right off of our skull.
On June 12th, Mount Pinatubo blows. The first explosion sends a mushroom cloud of smoke some 10 miles into the sky, blotting out the sun. Then Then on June 15th, the main eruption hurls grapefruit-sized stones some 25 miles. The eruption is so intense, it creates its own thunderheads. The last remaining personnel quickly evacuate Clark Air Force Base.
We got down the road 5 miles, and we decided that we had been lacking in courage. So we returned to the base and got our equipment all going again.
Andy Lockhart had just made some popcorn, and John looks over and sees Andy eating popcorn and says, what are you doing eating popcorn at a time like this? And Andy says, I always eat popcorn at this part of the movie.
Mount Pinatubo erupts 26 times, blanketing hundreds of square miles in a gray-green ash, including all of Manila, 60 miles away. It sucks the heat from the air, turning day to night and summer into winter. Dozen towns and the homes of more than 1 million Filipinos are crushed under the weight of ash and water. But 80,000 have been successfully evacuated. The loss of life, over 500, is low for an eruption of this magnitude, thanks to the prudent teamwork of both scientists and government officials. But 200,000 acres of farmland are buried, and half of the livestock will die. Pinatubo's eruption creates a gaseous veil around the world so immense it actually lowers the Earth's temperature, the signature of the most powerful volcano in the 20th century.
In a moment, the conclusion of
violence and their terror, but hurricanes and thunderstorms act as Earth's air conditioners. They cool the Earth and are essential to life. The forces of nature are the primeval sources of life on Earth. Their powerful workings form our continents, reshaping the world through dramatic upheavals. In this way, they continue to create our splendid and majestic topography and a wonderfully diverse planet. This diversity gives us millions of species of life. Mother Earth is a living entity, and her natural forces are the dynamic agents of change, growth, and most important,